Thank y'all for tuning in. This is another episode of the Apocalypse of a Moor book discussion. In this episode, we're going to talk about chapter 5. Um, Title of this chapter is Who and What is a United States Citizen? Now, since the 14th Amendment, there have been a lot of lies thrown around about who's a U.S. citizen and what, and more or less, those lies are to keep us in a shackled state of mind, a stateless state of mind. Um, so first, we're going to start with in the beginning of the United States. Um, there was actually no such thing as a U.S. citizen. Um, there were only state citizens. Um, in order to be a U.S. citizen, you uh, you had to be a state citizen. Immigration and naturalization was done through the states, even though the United States controlled the borders. After I think it was like 2 years, um, the whoever was trying to come to the states, they would have to apply to the state that they were intending on being a resident of or a citizen of. So yeah, those were the immigration and naturalization laws of 1790. Those were some of the first immigration and naturalization laws. Um, that was let me see, that was yeah, that was 1790. Um, the first Immigration and Naturalization Acts, and what I was saying about there was no such thing as a U.S. citizen. Um, that's backed up by the slaughterhouse cases, um, where I quote, "It has been said by eminent judges that no man was a citizen of the United States except as he was a citizen of one of the states composing the Union. Those, therefore, who had been born and always resided in the District of Columbia or in the territories, though within the United States, were not citizens." So basically saying you basically had to be a state citizen in order to be a U.S. citizen. Um, this also confirms that Washington, D.C. is not a state. For those of you who didn't already know that, this confirms that Washington, D.C. is not a state. It never has been a state. It is a territory. Um, now, one of the things that the Dred Scott. Let's go back to the Dred Scott case. That was 1856. Um, that said that the um, Constitution didn't have the power to make Negroes citizens of the states, and the states didn't have that power either. Now that goes back to um, international law and standards to say where they say basically enemies in occupied territories are always going to be enemies. Um, they can't force us into a U.S. citizenship status because that's actually what's happening. We have to actually apply for U.S. citizenship through immigration and naturalization. And we go back to Wong Kim Ark, that case that said the immigration and naturalization laws weren't even developed until 1870, which was 2 years after the 14th Amendment. So that again wasn't advertised. So none of our people actually um, applied for U.S. citizenship. So um, that again left us in a stateless status. Now, back then, from the beginning, the citizenship of the United States was basically French, English, or British, uh, Dutch, German, Scottish, uh, Irish. They were basically all Western European countries that made up the actual state citizenry. Um, when when they expatriated through the Revolutionary War, when they expatriated from their respective uh, countries, they were the state citizens. Um, now, that's in the beginning. Um, Now we have to go. That's pre 14th Amendment. That's pre 14th Amendment. The state citizens were the U.S. citizen. In order to be a U.S. citizen, you had to be a state citizen. Pre 14th Amendment, immigration and naturalization was done through application through the individual states, not District of Columbia. There was no such thing as a U.S. citizen. So now we jump to post 14th Amendment, and you have um, there is no more immigration through the states. Immigration and naturalization is done through District of Columbia. Um, Also, the 14th Amendment created a U.S. citizen that is totally separate from the state citizen. So now we have a issue because now you have state citizens and you have U.S. citizens. So this is also in the slaughterhouse cases, um, where they say that the 14th Amendment created a U.S. citizen totally separate and distinct from a state citizen. Um, they also say that, and this one is quite interesting because this one I'm gonna say this one for one of my trolls out there. Um, and we were going back and forth over one of my videos, I think over the 14th Amendment. And it said that um, the now let me make sure I put this get this right because I need to quote this because what the 14th Amendment did when it created that U.S. citizen, um, it also made a distinction between it, Washington D.C. and states. Now the U.S. citizen is a citizen of Washington D.C. The states are still state citizens, but the U.S. citizen is now a foreign entity. Now, from that point on, immigration and naturalization was done through the United States. Again, they didn't tell our people that we had to go through the immigration and naturalization process. But now, this is where it gets interesting because the 14th Amendment did a lot of other things along with the Organic Act of 1787. Excuse me, 1878. Yes, the Organic Act of 1878 that came right after the 14th Amendment. Um, it said, now this is quote from the slaughterhouse cases. It says, of the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States and the privileges and immunities of citizens of the state and what they respectively are, we will presently consider, but we wish to state here that it is only the former, the U.S. citizen, which are placed by this clause under the protection of the federal Constitution. I'm going to read that again to you. Of the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States and the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the state and what they respectively are, we will presently consider. But we wish to state here that it is only the former, the U.S. citizens, which are placed by this clause under the protection of the federal Constitution, and that the latter, the state citizens, whatever they may be, are not intended to have any additional protection under the amendment. Now, what that says is basically the Constitution no longer applies to the states. State citizens have to find their constitutional protections under the state's constitutions. Now, mind you, for all these people who think that they're U.S. citizens, this right here tells you there's a difference. They created the difference. The 14th Amendment created the difference. So now, who is a U.S. citizen? Well, let's find out. This is where we get to the word person. This is what the sovereign citizens were going on about. This is what this is why they did what they did, because they found out about the 14th Amendment. So this is where they start playing with the words. Okay. Let's start with Title I, Section 1 of United States Code. The words person and whoever shall include corporations, companies, associations, firms, partnerships, societies, and joint stock companies, as well as individuals. Now, human being isn't in that definition of person or whoever. Human being is not in that definition. Now, don't let the word individual fool you. Individual is an adjective, and it describes the amount of something. So you cannot be just an individual. You have to be an individual man or an individual woman, an individual dog or an individual cat. You cannot just be an individual. And if you look the word up, Google it. Individual is an adjective. It is not a noun. It is not a thing. So you can't just be an individual. This is the wordplay game that they use against us. Now, again, and just to show you that they mean that they know what a human being is, just to show you that they know what a human being is, Title I, Section 8, United States Code. The words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapiens who was born and alive at any state of development. Now, the word human being only includes an infant. Does not include an adult. Only includes an infant. So they know what a human being is. So they have their definitions where they want their definitions to be. So we go again. Title 8, Section 1101, B3. The term person means individual or an organization. Again, Title 26. This is the IRS code. Title 26, Section 7701. The term person shall be construed to mean and include any individual, include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. Didn't hear human being in there. Did hear individual. Did hear individual. There again, that's that. An individual is an imaginary thing because it's an adjective. So it has to be an imaginary thing. If it's being considered as a noun, it has to be imaginary. So, okay, now again, didn't include the word human being. Now this is the IRS code, mind you. Now, again, Title 26. Oh, Section 7701. Again, the first definition was A, Section A. The Title Section 7, Section 30, United States person. The term United States person means a citizen resident of the United States. B, a domestic partnership. C, a domestic corporation. D, any estate other than a foreign estate within the meaning of paragraph 31, and any trust which is able to be executed by the United States. So there are all their definitions of the word person, but none of them include the word human being. They're the U.S. person. Don't include the human being. Being that the United States is a corporation, it cannot have, it can't, it's a fictional thing, so it can't deal with actual real things. So their citizens can't be real people. Only politicians and other public officials are citizens of the United States. So with that being said, I'm a end it right there, because this chapter is about who is an actual citizen of the United States. And again, I'm gonna give you another case to prove that we are not citizens of the United States, because the immigration and naturalization laws were not told to us. Here's a case: Toyota versus United States. Until 1870, only aliens, being free white persons, were eligible to citizenship. In that year, aliens of African nativity and persons of African descent were made eligible to apply for citizenship, because it was not automatic. So for all of those who would try to tell you that citizenship is automatic, that's not the case. Because it basically they are occupying group. And here again, children of enemies born in a place within the dominions of another sovereign, then occupied by them by conquest, are still aliens. They are still aliens to this land. They are still aliens. That is U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark. Then you have the allegiance of an individual is not to be transferred from one sovereign to another except by his own consent and by his own acts. Though these principles are applicable both to inhabitants of ceded or conquered territories and to immigrants. There again, they could not make it automatic. They had to give us the chance to apply for U.S. citizenship or station or whatever it may be. So there again, we're not who's a U.S. citizen, who's actually a U.S. citizen. Well, they just told you it's all corporations and fictional entities. That's why, if you look around now, that's why corporations have all the rights. That's why corporations get to pollute the land, air, and water. That's why they get to do all the things that they do, because they are the actual U.S. citizens. The people are the people are the actual enemies of the state. Their property is given to what's called an alien property custodian. That's basically the Federal Reserve. But we'll get into that one later in another episode. But right now, again, this is the Apocalypse of a Moor book discussion. This was chapter 5. Who and what is a U.S. citizen or a citizen of the United States? Peace and love.